Are these insoles worth $300? That's the question we're going to answer today. And we're going to use an off-the-shelf kind of $60 comparison insole in order to help us answer this question. So, welcome back to The Mindful Hunter. I'm your host as always, Jay Nichol. And like I mentioned, we're here to do an insole review. But this is almost a prelude to a boot series that I'm about to kick off. Boots are the one piece of gear where I think gear reviews are almost useless. They're not completely useless, but they're not nearly as helpful as other categories like a spotting scope or a tent or a quilt. Boots are so hyper-personal that I honestly believe you cannot reasonably expect to buy and be happy with a pair of boots without trying several pairs on. So instead of doing a ton of boot reviews, I'm actually going to do a series called How to Find the Perfect Hunting Boot. And in order to kick this off, I've actually been holding off on doing this insole review for a while. I have now been running these SheepFeet insoles for 2 years, and I've been running some version of the sole insole for significantly longer than that. So I feel like I have enough field experience in order to give an educated opinion and some insights and some advice on what you should expect in an insole and what you should be looking for in an insole. I would also like to mention, I'm just using sole as an example. There are multiple other very good off-the-shelf options. SuperFeet spring to mind. I have tried several, and of all of them, sole are my favorite. And I'm going to get into why. In fact, I'll jump into it right now. I think keeping your foot in the right place in your boot is technically more important than having padding in your boot. So there's kind of two schools of thought with insoles. Some provide some cushion, thinking that the more strikes you have, the more sore your foot is going to get. And if you can put some padding in there, that will, help increase the comfort level of your foot. The other type of insole is more like sole, where it's a somewhat rigid platform, has a highly defined arch. Don't necessarily mean it has a high arch, but it has an arch with a great deal of definition. It is very firm and not a ton of padding. And the idea being, if we keep your foot in the right place within the boot, sucked into the heel cup, forefoot directly in the toe box so your toes can splay every time you walk, then even though you're still striking with impact, because you're striking in the correct place, your foot are going to feel better after a long day. That second school of thought is where I tend to align most strongly. One of the major reasons being, when you're hunting, you could be carrying 70, 80, 90 pounds on your back. I don't think 3/16 of an inch of foam is really going to help you after hiking for 10 hours a day. But I do think having your foot operate effectively and efficiently every time it strikes the ground will help you out after a 10-hour day. The other thing that I want to take a note here, your foot has an arch for a very specific reason. It's almost like think of a leaf spring on the bed of a truck. Like every time you connect, that arch is supposed to decompress or elongate and then create a certain amount of tension. And then as you step off, you're supposed to get like a bit of a spring in your step. So while we want to use a insole that will support our arch, we don't want to completely take out the suspension characteristics of our foot, because that's going to kind of also create a negative impact and more pain throughout the day. So we want to support our arch, but we don't want to kill our arch. Okay, before we dive into the category by category assessment, I got to give a brief note from our two sponsors, Forged in the Backcountry and Mindful Reviews. This is a Forged in the Backcountry shirt. This is a lifestyle apparel brand for backcountry hunters that I launched about 3.5 months ago. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, hats, crew necks. The idea was well-fitting, stylish, high-quality clothing for the backcountry hunter when they're not in the mountains. I'm very excited. The launch has gone very well. If you want to support the channel, or if you just want to pick up some cool clothes, forgedinthebackcountry.com. Up next, Mindful Reviews. This is an online subscription-based platform that I built from scratch for like-minded hunters who are interested in unbiased, not sponsored gear reviews. If you want to join, mindful-reviews.com. We have really active forums. I have monthly giveaways. It's a really great place, and it's only growing to be better and better as more people join and as I sink more time, energy, and money into kind of building out the platform. So we would love to have you. And if you want to see more of this content, just no BS, unsponsored, unbiased, go join the platform, because that's how I'm able to afford to do all this kind of stuff. Okay, so diving back into the review, as always, I use a forced rank scoring system. So in each category, the winner of that category gets a 1, the loser gets a 2. When we get to the end of all the scoring, the product with the lowest score wins. Diving right in, let's look at price. As I mentioned already, these retail for $300 USD. If you live in Canada, they're gonna be significantly more because you have to actually pay for shipping twice. When you buy SheepFeet, they ship you a box with this kind of foam molding that take a 3D imprint of your foot. You ship it back to them, and then they ship you the insole. So you kind of get dinged for it twice. I live close to the States, so these, much with most of my other products, I had it shipped to a post box in Blaine. I actually drove across, stuck my foot in it, and then shipped it back in the very same day. And then went and picked up my insoles. But it's about $66 for shipping to Canada. So you're getting, upwards, $370, $375 US after tax to get these in Canada. These are $59. You can get insoles, off the shelf insoles anywhere from $35, $45, all the way up to $80 or $90. I think $60 for these is an incredibly fair price. Not really sure how much weight matters, but I obsessively need to weigh everything, and these insoles were no different. These SheepFeet weigh in at 7 ounces, and these particular soles weigh in at 5 ounces. Now, there are different versions of the soles. These are the wides, so they have more foam. These weigh 5.6 ounces. These are the standard SheepFeet with the regular amount of cushion. You can get a deluxe that has an extra layer of cushion. I'm sure that would take it up another notch. But yeah, I would say on average, the SheepFeet weigh about 2 ounces more than an analogous version of the soles. Now, the customization is where SheepFeet really shine. These ones have the heel insert and a met pad. Let me back up a second and say that I have Morton's Neuroma in my right foot, which means that I have a nerve that gets inflamed. I've had 2 surgeries. I've had stem cells, PRP, cryo treatments, cryoablation. I've done a lot of stuff to get it to the point where it's manageable now, but I need a metatarsal pad in my insole. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's this elevated pad here in the middle. Basically, what that does is forces the metatarsals in your foot to expand more because the inflammation comes from the nerve getting pinched between the metatarsals. I have the same thing on the sole here. You can get soles with met pads, but that's one of the reasons I've had to spend so much time and energy and money looking at insoles. I've had custom orthotics made by a podiatrist. I've bought off the shelf option. I've bought SheepFeet. I bought everything under the suns. I did the Lathrop & Sons boots. We can get into that a little bit more later. But I have had no choice but to find the best insole possible. The other thing that I want to note that I probably should have said earlier, in some ways, I almost believe your insole is more important than your boot. Because like I mentioned, the insole is what's going to be responsible for keeping your foot in the right spot in the boot. So no matter how well designed the boot is, if your foot's not in the right spot, you're not taking advantage of all those design principles. Something else to note is that there is not a single boot on the market that comes with an even halfway decent insole. Like no matter what boots you buy, I firmly believe you need to go buy aftermarket insoles. I got a pair of $800 La Sportiva Nepal Evo GTXs in the other room, and I bet you those insoles cost 13 cents. It's literally a felt pad, an 1/8 of an inch thick, completely flat, cut in the shape of the bottom of the boot. Like, who in their right mind is wearing those boots with that insole? Nobody. Why they put a 13-cent insole inside an $800 boot still blows my mind. And why there isn't, paired options, like why they don't offer more customizable options when you buy your boot to buy an accompanying insole that's made by the same company. It seems like a no-brainer to me. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. We were discussing customization, and the reason I went onto that rant is why customization is so important to me, because my feet have such specialized needs. So some of the options that you can get with the SheepFeet are a heel stabilizer is an extra $15. And that's basically this squared off portion right here that makes sure the insole sticks in your heel cup. To me, this is a non-negotiable. I'm not even really sure why they would offer it as an option. I think everybody should select the heel stabilizer. And then there's a variety of additional options, all running $20 a piece. You can get metatarsal pads, plantar fasciitis pads, heel lifts, heel spur pads, stability wedge, cutouts, and then you can also get standard padding or deluxe padding. And let's talk about that for a minute, because I think having the appropriate amount of volume within your boot in order for your foot to behave appropriately is more important than having additional cushioning. So I think in most hunting boots, what you're gonna find if you go all the way up to the deluxe, it's gonna get rid of that additional foot volume, and your forefoot is gonna feel cramped vertically within the toe box of your boot. And your foot is not gonna, your toes aren't gonna be able to splay out like they should, and your arch isn't gonna be able to compress and decompress like it should. That being said, if you have bigger boots that might be a half a size larger, or you have very narrow feet and you have a lot of volume in your boot, you could size up to the deluxe, and it's going to feel nice. There's going to be extra cushion, but I believe for most people in most circumstances, the standard cushioning is enough. Now, if we go over to the soles, there's a variety of different options, and it's not like they have one sole that you put options on. They have a bunch of products that all have different options. So you can get thin, medium, or thick cushioning. You can get the regular or the wide version. You can get one with metatarsal pads, and they have the active base, which is this foam, which I'm going to get into that construction in a moment, or you can get their performance base, which is made out of cork. The cork one is apparently more environmentally friendly. I don't recommend it. I had a pair with the cork, and it didn't hold its rigidity and shape nearly as long as these ones with the foam bottom. So these are the ones that I recommend. That being said, obviously the SheepFeet are more customizable, so they win that category. Now, if we move on to materials and construction, so we essentially have 4 layers within this SheepFeet. We have the DuraCover, which is basically this like aggregate or composite foam material that I'm sure comes in like some type of blocks or rolls, and they slice it quite thin. And they do make some comments about the different foams having different density and thus distributing the weight more effectively. Not really sure how much I buy into that, but it's a nice foam. And then underneath that, in this second yellow layer here, we have what they call the Extreme Curl Cushion. So this is an open cell foam. Open cell foam will absorb impact better and kind of spring back to its natural shape faster than a closed cell foam will. Also, they've added an antimicrobial agent to keep odor and, all the little bugs from living in your insoles. Then we go to the Extreme Foot Frame. So that's this kind of like woven molded piece here. It's custom molded based on the 3D molds they take of your feet. I am not sure. It's some type of hard plastic. Like I said, it almost looks woven. I'm not sure what this is made out of, but I've been running these for 2 years, and this thing, there's not even a mark on it. It's still in fantastic shape. And then finally, we have the heel stabilizer, which is, it's kind of a highly dense foam material with this kind of rigid bottom. So that's your materials and construction for the SheepFeet. Now moving on to the soles, we'll start at the bottom with that. This is a density mapped EVA base. Now EVA stands for ethylene vinyl acetate, which is essentially just like a rubbery vinyl compound that with different proportions of vinyl and acetate can get different levels of rigidity, but it makes this nice, almost rigid foam-like structure that apparently is supposed to distribute your weight more evenly. They added Polygene for odor control. There's a moisture wicking top sheet. And then these guys only have one layer of cushion. I'm not sure what this foam is made of. It is much more dense than the foam on the SheepFeet, which I think has some pros and some cons that we'll dig into in a minute. Let's move on to support and comfort. Now, one of the things that I should have addressed during the customization section, obviously the SheepFeet are custom made for your feet. When you step in this foam box, 3D imprint, these are made for you. There are two ways to customize the fit of the soles. The first way is heat treatment. There's actually a small little temperature indicator here, and you stick it in the oven. Think of it as like a boil and bite mouthpiece, but for your foot. You stick it in the oven, wait for it to reach 71 degrees Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit, take it out, put it in your boot, slap your foot in your boot, lace your boot up, wear your boots for 10 minutes, and it will mold to your foot. However, there's another, and to be honest, I found somewhat more effective way. Just wear them. Because you're applying so much pressure and heat when you wear your boots for like a 10-hour day. I found by the end of my first day of hunting, you take them out and they have this kind of like customized fit to them. So while it's not truly a custom orthotic, it definitely has the ability to mold to your individual foot. The main difference I would say between these is, except for the customization, which I think gives the SheepFeet a slight edge in support, is the two different densities of the foam. Like the SheepFeet is a much softer. Even if we go up to the wide sole, the foam is much denser. And so the SheepFeet is definitely more comfortable. When you put your foot in it, it feels like there's a higher level of cushioning. It's a more pleasing experience. But it's not like the sole is not comfortable. It's just a more rigid sensation than the SheepFeet is. Finally, we can go to durability. They both have their drawbacks in regards to durability. The footbed on the SheepFeet is built like a tank. Like you can't bend this, you can't twist it. It is unbelievably hard, and I think it would last next to forever. However, even after 2 years, you can already see like the cushioning in the heel pocket is almost gone. Like when I press down here, there is right where my heel compresses, it has completely flattened all the cushion. Where the ball of my foot goes, there's no cushion left. So this is the price you pay for the softer cushioning, is that over time, it loses that cushioning much faster. Whereas I've worn these soles for a very long time, and there is almost zero indication of where my actual foot is. There's still just as much resiliency in the heel pocket as there always was. So while it's a little less comfortable and a little more firm when you first put your foot in it, I think the life of this foam lasts much longer. I should add that there's a rebuilding process you can go through with SheepFeet. I think it's $70, and you basically ship your SheepFeet back in and they will completely redo, because I think the majority of the expense of the product is in molding your feet and building the custom footbed. I think, and so for $70, they will completely recover, new DuraCover, new curl cushion. And so while it's a bit of a drawback, I think if your feet are something that's truly important to you, I think you could probably get your SheepFeet redone every 2 to 3 years for most average hunters. I put about 75 to 100 days in the field. I've been running these for almost exactly 2 years, and 100% I need to get these things redone now. All right, so if we go to the score, SheepFeet win the customization, materials, support category. The soles win the price and weight category. And I actually gave these a tie on durability because I think the footbed in the SheepFeet is more durable than this EVA foam, which does lose its shape after a while. In fact, I've got a really great example. This is a pair of thin soles. So like I mentioned before, I need a lot of room in the forefoot of my boot. So in dress shoes and in my Bluntstones, these are my favorite insoles because I also have a high arch. And so really, I'm just looking for arch support. So these have almost no padding in them. These are probably 3 or 4 years old now, and I've worn them as my everyday Bluntstone inserts for quite some time. And you can see that over time, this EVA footbed, the shape of it tends to lose its integrity. So while the foam holds up in the sole, the footbed is not as firm, and the cushion goes in the SheepFeet, but the footbed maintains. So I kind of gave them each like a check mark and a red X, so they tie for durability. So if we go all that, the SheepFeet do win by 1 point. So the way this is marked is that the winner of each category gets a 1, the loser gets a 2, the lowest score wins. SheepFeet came out with an 8, Sole came out with a 9, so SheepFeet take it by an edge, which shouldn't be surprising because there's only one category that takes into account price, and we're looking at comparing a $300 product to a $60 product. So of course it's going to be superior. However, I do think I would be remiss if I didn't have a conversation about value, because essentially, this is 5 times more expensive than this. So the question is the SheepFeet performance 5 times better than the sole's performance? The answer to that is a pretty clear no to me. If I was going to quantify this with a number, I would say the SheepFeet are about 15% better than the soles. So if you are somebody who has disposable income, you're in your late 30s, early 40s, good job, love hunting, you can spend a lot of money on your hobby, I think the SheepFeet are for you. I think if you're somebody who has a very specific foot disorder, plantar fasciitis, Morton's Neuroma, maybe Achilles tendon problems, I also think the SheepFeet are for you. Or if you're a guy who spends, 70 plus days in the field and you're hiking through rugged terrain all the time, also, you should seriously consider the SheepFeet. But let's be honest, if you're a younger guy, you love hunting, you're still not making a ton of money, you'd rather spend your money on other gear, this is not a necessity. This is a luxury purchase. Unless you have some type of foot disorder, I really think this is a luxury purpose. I think if you still don't have a really great tent, a really great pack, really great optics, I think this $300 can be better spent elsewhere. I used these soles for years and they treated my feet incredibly well. Before hunting, I was a forestry engineer in British Columbia. I've hiked in the mountains for 15 years, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. So I have put miles on boots and insoles, and these soles had my back. So yeah, just to recap, if you have disposable income and your feet are really important to you, I think the SheepFeet are a very wise choice. And for me, they're worth the $300 all day, every day. But if you're a younger guy or you don't have as much disposable income and you don't have any real major issues with your foot, I think a product like these higher end off the shelf insoles will be a great addition, and you're going to notice a huge improvement in your feet if you're using factory insoles right now. So there you have it. My opinion on SheepFeet insoles after running them for 2 years, completely unbiased and non-sponsored. If there's other questions you want answered in this Finding the Perfect Boot series, drop them in the comments section below. I'll make sure to include them in the next video. If you could engage with this content in any way, like, share, comment, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps push it up to the top of the algorithm and get this content exposed to more people. And as always, thank you for tuning in.